The following program may contain coarse language, violence, nudity, mature subject matter, or scenes which may not be suitable for all viewers. Viewer discretion is advised.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X-Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
Welcome back to the X-Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell. We're coming to you from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Worldwide toll-free, 800-610-7035. My email address is xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On all social media sites, X-Zone Radio TV, and our main website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. And don't forget, X-Zone Nation, the X-Zone store is now open at www.thexzonestore.com. As well, we also now have the X-Zone Book Club. That's online. You can get past copies. I believe there's over 55 past editions of the X-Chronicles newspaper that are up there. I know Craig and the crew are going to be putting up more as the days go on. Plus, you can go to the xzonestore.com or the xzonebookclub.com and get your copy of the X-Zone Directory of Who's Who for 2014 online, in print form, or digital form. Wow, a lot is happening here in the X-Zone. You know, last night, X-Zone Nation, we had some very bad news while we were doing the show. We heard of the passing of one of the greatest comedians of all time, in my book, in my opinion, and I'm talking about Robin Williams. But what was the story behind the story? Was it suicide? Well, what we've got is we don't have the real answers that take time out after an investigation by the coroner's office, the law enforcement agencies, and so on. But Dr. Singh is with us, Dr. Jay Singh. He is an internationally recognized researcher, author, public speaker, and educator in the field of forensic mental health, having published over 45 journal articles, books, and chapters on research conducted in over 50 countries. Dr. Singh has lectured at Harvard University, Yale University, Columbia University, Cornell University, Brown University, Dartmouth College, and the University of Pennsylvania. Dr. Singh is a professor of epidemiology and violence risk assessment at Molde University College in Norway. The website, www.gifrinc.com, and you can follow Dr. Singh on Twitter at JPSinghPhD. That's JayPSinghPhD. And Doctor, thank you very much for coming on the show. I was a great fan of Robin Williams, but the information that we're learning over the past 24 hours, man, you know, it seems that the laughter was reminding me of a song that John Lennon wrote many years ago. Although I laugh and I act like a clown, beneath this mask I am wearing a frown.
Absolutely, Rob. It's certainly the case where I think so many of us are grieving the loss of a really central figure of all of our generations. This was an individual who didn't matter when you grew up. If you were on the planet today, you knew who Robin Williams was. He made you smile. He made you laugh. He was that everyman who just really, I think everybody saw a little bit of themselves in, whether it was the quirky, the weird, but really always put a smile on our face.
Oh, yeah, who can ever forget Nanu Shazbutt, Orc from Mork? Come on.
Of course. Come on now.
Yeah. Mind you, I think I just dated myself there, but what the heck? We're talking Robin Williams. We're talking about an iconic actor, an iconic comedian, and he's not with us today. The law enforcement agencies are now saying that he actually hung himself. And when you look at the movies, you look at the television, you look at the comedy shows that he's done, he didn't look depressed. Is this all part of the mental illness, social behavior that we are so used to seeing? Like, we don't talk about mental illness. We hide it instead of saying, all right, we've got a problem here. Let's investigate it. Let's help it.
Sure. I think, Rob, it's something where all of us, to an extent, when we meet new people or when we're trying to impress others, for some of us, it's even part of the job. I think about politicians, for example. We put on a facade of likability, a mask, if you will, that in a way shields us from negativity, shields us from things that perhaps are deeper down in ourselves. When I think about an iconic actor like Robin Williams, I think that anyone would not be hesitant to say that this was a character actor. We're talking about Mrs. Doubtfire and the genie from Aladdin. I mean, these were quintessential roles of his. Yeah. And this is one of the reasons why we loved him, is that he was so great at getting into someone else's skin, so great at taking on someone else's persona.
Doctor, stand by. You and I have to take a 2-minute commercial break. We'll be right back. Exonation, Dr. Jay Singh is my very special guest this hour. We're talking about depression, addiction, and bipolar this hour here in the X-Zone as we investigate every aspect of the world of the paranormal, science of parapsychology, quantum physics, you name it. We talk about it because you, the X-Zone Nation, deserve to know the story behind the story. We'll be back. Don't go away. Modern Esoteric, Beyond Our Senses by Brad Olson, consummates the lifology story about where humanity originates. It is the lost continents, the primitive wisdom, the mythos of creation, and the rethinking of ancient history as we are taught in academia. There is much more to the story than what we have been told. As this is the first book in the Esoteric series, Modern Esoteric starts at the beginning of time and accelerates up to this modern age. Future Esoteric is book 2 in the series and takes a forward-looking position ahead of today with an open and honest examination of the ET issue and various unexplained phenomena. To discover the writings of author Brad Olson, visit www.bradolson.com. That's www.bradolson.com. Named one of the world's greatest psychics, Elizabeth Joyce is now giving readings worldwide via Skype. Elizabeth Joyce is recognized for her clairvoyant ability to help find missing persons, her analysis of dreams, past life regression work, mediumship, and her accurate predictions. Elizabeth has been a frequent guest on the X-Zone radio show with yours truly, Rob McConnell, now for several years. For an appointment with Elizabeth Joyce, call 201-934-8986 or Skype at elizabeth.joyce. And for more information, you can always visit Elizabeth Joyce online at www.new-visions.com.
Do you have a dis-ease that you would like to alleviate through a natural means? Have you been contacted by angels, ghosts, or even extraterrestrials and want to validate these experiences? Or would you simply like to speak with someone who can help you find your life's purpose? I'm Dr. Joseph Mara, and I'm offering my services free of charge for first-time clients contacting me during the month of April. These free consultations include angel card readings, guided meditations, life coaching, and energy healing. If you have always wanted to explore these types of experiences but were skeptical or simply could not afford them, then take advantage of this free special offer. Contact me through my website, aguidinglight, spelled lite.com, to schedule your consultation today. Until then, I offer you love, light, and laughter.
Welcome back to the X Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell. My special guest this hour is Dr. J.P. Singh, and Dr. Singh is the internationally award-winning president and CEO of Global Institute of Forensic Research. And the website is www.gifrinc.com, and you can follow Dr. Singh on Twitter at JP Singh, PhD, and that's JAYP Singhphd. I kind of had a crush on Pam Dauber, and after all, in the TV series Mork and Mindy, her name was Mindy McConnell, and I figured, well, my name's McConnell, we've got to be related somehow, but we weren't. So then I tried to justify Pamela Anderson being related to me, and that didn't work out either. But let's get a little serious here. Like Robin Williams always brought smiles to many people. You couldn't think of any of his movies without getting a smile on your face. Mrs. Doubtfire was one of my favorites. But what does that tell us? Hindsight is 20/20, Doctor. When you think back of the movies that you saw, the performances that you watched with and by Robin Williams, knowing what happened yesterday, was there anything that he was doing or saying that was a red flag?
I think likely the most telling of any of the performances actually weren't any of his films per se, but was more his stand-up comedy, which entertained countless of us. He was certainly a favorite of mine, of many people.
Yeah.
And when it came to his stand-up comedy, really the words that one immediately thinks of are things like energetic or manic. And really when it comes to bipolar disorder, as we call it, bipolar disorder is characterized by these very manic states, so these high highs that are followed then by these troughs, these depressive low lows. It's almost like this a cyclical roller coaster that one goes through emotionally, and that can be really devastating when played out over long periods. Now, certainly, taking a look at Mr. Williams' stand-up comedy, you could see not necessarily that depression, but could certainly see those manic traits and aspects coming out. And we do know from the research literature that individuals diagnosed with bipolar disorder are twice as likely to commit suicide as individuals who are not.
Wow. Why doesn't society open their hearts and say, all right, let's look at mental health. There's a problem here. It's nothing to be ashamed of. Why is mental health and the problems that so many people face in society because of mental health, why is it kept in the closet?
This is one of these things I think a lot of us wonder about this, Rob, particularly after a tragic event like this happens. And really, let's think about a biological disorder such as cancer, for example. We can biopsy that tumor, we can remove that tumor from the body, and hopefully remove any traces of cancer there. And all of a sudden, the individual is quote-unquote okay. They're treated, they're cured. When it comes to something like depression or bipolar disorder, these are also biological diseases. These are biological problems. Over the past several decades, brain scanning technology, our understanding of neurology has improved to the point now where we know that at the end of the day, these individuals' brains function differently than individuals with perhaps, one would say, a typically functioning brain organs. And what ends up happening because of this is that just like you would never tell someone diagnosed with cancer, hey, snap out of it, or, this is a character flaw in you, we need to be treating things such as mood disorders the same way and not saying, hey, you're really down all the time, snap out of it, or what's wrong with you. But I think that that's kind of a natural reaction, particularly with someone like Mr. Williams, where people would say, here's a guy who so many people loved. He had money, he had a family, he had the adoration of fans around the world. How could this guy who made us laugh for decades be depressed to the point of taking his own life? And I think that that's a potential answer there.
Well, according to what I was told today when we were researching for this segment, he was broke. He was bankrupt. All the money that he had earned went to all his ex-wives. So that in itself is enough to make anybody go off the deep end. And one thing about mental health, you just can't say, come on, it's all in your head. Because it is. And people have to realize that it's a very serious problem. It's in the closet. My God. Get it out of the closet. Let's face it. Let's work on it together. We're not talking about leprosy. We're not talking about Legionnaire's disease. And even when it comes to leprosy and Legionnaire's disease, people work to get these people better. But when it comes to mental health issues, it's like, no way.
Some of the numbers that we hear about as well, Rob, I think that you're certainly onto something that's very important. Here in the United States, we spend approximately around $2.6 trillion every year on the issue of healthcare, but only a very small minority of that goes towards mental health care or towards individuals who are addicted to either alcohol or drugs.
Yeah.
And it's gotten to the point now where the National Institute of Mental Health has estimated that over 50% of individuals diagnosed with bipolar disorder are not getting any kind of treatment whatsoever, drug or otherwise.
Unbelievable. I remember a time where if somebody wasn't, mental health was, oh my gosh, you put them in an asylum, oh my Lord, the loony bin.
Sure.
But they were hospitals. They weren't treated like hospitals. The doctors, the psychiatrists, the psychologists, they weren't, in my opinion, doctor, were not given the due respect that they so rightfully deserved.
It's certainly the case where you hear about these, the term is snake pits, these snake pits that people would be placed into. You certainly hear about these horror stories. Now, of course, it's something where these are usually going to be more publicized than the hospitals that weren't like this. Back in the 1980s, when we first began this process of what was called in the States, it was a movement called deinstitutionalization, of closing down these federally funded centers, these asylums, and kind of giving the responsibility of caring for the mentally ill to our communities. We really didn't have a strong infrastructure built. And so because of that, if we take a look at the population of asylums and the population of jails and prisons, what we see is that as individuals were exiting these asylums, the rates of individuals in jails and prisons skyrocketed to the point where now in the States, between 1980 to 2006, we've had over a 500% increase in terms of the population of jails and prisons. And at the same time, less than 50% of individuals who are currently incarcerated in one of these facilities in the States is actually receiving the mental health care that they need.
In your opinion, doctor, how many of the people who have been institutionalized should actually be there?
This is a very difficult question, I think, solely because what we're dealing with is a very heterogeneous group of individuals. This is something that we frequently get trouble with when it comes to conducting research. Let's say, for example, that we have two different treatments. Let's call them treatment X and treatment Y. And we go into two different hospitals, and we use treatment X and it works really well. We use treatment Y and it works terribly. And all of a sudden we say, hey, treatment X is what we really need to be using for, let's say, treating depression. But the issue is what are the characteristics of those different units? Who are the people being treated?
Right.
What's their age? what are the different diagnoses that they have. And people oftentimes forget that when it comes to something like mental illness, that very, very frequently the rule rather than the exception is what we refer to as comorbidity, which means the existence of multiple mental illnesses, multiple diagnoses in the same individual.
I believe law enforcement should have a better knowledge when it comes to dealing with a person who could be mentally ill. We've seen this before.
Oh, certainly, yes. I think that sensitivity training is of the utmost importance, not just for mental illness, but for really any issue that's of sensitive nature, really, be it something such as mental retardation, something such as fetal alcohol spectrum disorders. There's really a whole range of different topics that I think it's very important that our valuable servicemen and women who are in the law enforcement agencies, regardless of where they are, the States, Canada, or elsewhere, that they make sure that they receive this proper training, that we be funding that actively.
I also believe, sir, that there should be greater scrutiny put onto the institutions, and that they should have civilian as well as medical review panels, because I know for a fact, and we did a show going back 14, 15 years ago. We received a call from a gentleman who was inside the Napa State Hospital. His name, Wayne Morin Jr. And what he was telling us on air were basically crimes against humanity being perpetrated in the hospital to the patients. To make a very long story short, the Canadian Minister of Justice received a call from the Minister or the Department of Justice in the States asking for a copy of our tapes for the show, which we gladly gave them. And there were several people who were charged with crimes at Napa State. There were people who were sexually abusing the patients. There was rampant selling of alcohol to the patients, narcotics. There were smuggling rings going on. So how do we take care of the people that we put into the institutions when things like this happen?
Certainly. I mean, hearing things like this, I think it no matter who's listening, whether we're medical professionals or mental health professionals or just really anyone, I think that this is really something that tugs at all of our heartstrings. And it's this terror of trying to put ourselves into the shoes of individuals who are in these kinds of facilities where these kinds of things are going on. I mean, what a tremendous challenge that must be. And it's definitely something where I completely agree. Review panels are absolutely necessary. I'm not aware of the literature that takes a look at how commonly these kinds of complaints are made.
Dr. Singh, we've got to take our break with the news. Doctor, please stand by. Dr. J.P. Singh is my special guest. www.gfrinc.com. My name is Rob McConnell. This is the X Zone. I'll be back. Don't go away. My name is Rob McConnell, and I would like to tell you about a very special lady that I have the pleasure of knowing, and that's Miss Sylvia Anthony. Sylvia Anthony believes the golden years are a time to gear up and get busy, not relax and take it easy. She has faced many hardships in her 84 years, but they have made her stronger and more determined. As founder and president of Sylvia's Haven, a shelter for women and their children near Boston, Sylvia has helped transform over 1,086 lives in the past 27 years, not only with housing, but also providing direction as to where they can go to develop the earning skills they want and need to live free from difficult domestic situations. Sylvia's Haven is everything to Sylvia Anthony, even calling it her magnificent obsession. Women who qualify for the program at Sylvia's Haven receive assistance via guidance counselors to find the appropriate job opportunity. Women and their children may remain at the housing for up to 2 years. At the end of this time, or sooner, a woman who is successfully employed and has an apartment or home may leave Sylvia's Haven to begin a new and independent life. Now this is where you come in to help make Sylvia's dream into a reality. Sylvia's dream is to have a Sylvia's Haven in every state to help as many women and their children as she can, and to help this dream come true, a crowdfunding site has been established which can be accessed at www.sylviasdream.org. Now that's www.sylviasdream.org. With your financial help and support, Sylvia Anthony will continue to help those in their time of need, not only in the Boston area, but with her dream of having a Sylvia's Haven in every state of the United States. Your help is needed to make Sylvia's dream come true. Please visit and give at www.sylviasdream.org. Once again, www.sylviasdream.org. And remember, the only difference between a dream and reality is just doing it. We need your help to make Sylvia's dream come true. Visit www.sylviasdream.org. Once again, www.sylviasdream.org. For the X Zone Radio TV show and the X Chronicles newspaper, I am Rob McConnell.
This is the X Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Welcome back, everyone. Dr. J.P. Singh is our special guest. And Doctor, what can we do as a society to help the medical professions, to help the caregivers, to help the patients when it comes to mental illness? There's got to be something we all can do.
Sure. You know, here in the States, one of the positive developments that we're seeing here is the passing of Obamacare, so the Affordable Health Care Act, which is supposed to bring mental health care to approximately 32 million Americans who did not previously have access to it. The issue is that when it comes to the accessibility of mental health care services, still in rural areas of the United States, it is a huge problem, and even in areas which are much more urban. So, for example, I live in the state of Virginia near Washington, D.C., and one of the issues that we've had recently is a very tragic incident with the governor of the state, Governor Clay Deeds, whose son had a variety of mental issues. And what happened was that it was very unfortunate. His son took his own life.
Oh, no.
And had attacked Governor Deeds beforehand with a knife and slashed his face a number of times in an attempt to harm him. And it was just an absolutely terrible situation that has just brought a lot of light on the issue of not having enough hospital beds in the first place. Governor Deeds tried to have his son institutionalized involuntarily, so against his will, and unfortunately there just really were not enough beds in the hospitals that they approached. There was no place for him to be, and because of that, unfortunately, he didn't get the supervision he needed. And these sorts of tragic incidents, they do happen, even though they are rare.
So when it comes to taking care of the mentally ill, let's just go back a little bit. Teachers are the first line, in my opinion, of defense when it comes to watching the children, seeing how they interact, their behaviors in a sociological setting. Should teachers be taught better when it comes to what to look for, how to treat, and how to troubleshoot when it comes to a student who might who might be on the road or who might have issues?
I think there are two sides of this, Rob. The first is that certainly we need to make sure that our teachers are equipped to be able to identify certain signs and symptoms of children who may need some additional assistance, be it behavioral assistance, learning assistance, etc. The second, though, is to be wary when it comes to things, for example, such as trying to identify or target supposed high-risk youth who are at high risk of suicide, of high risk of extreme forms of violence, such as school shootings. And this is because of a phenomenon that scientifically we refer to as base rate. A base rate just means how often something happens. And the less often something happens, the more difficult it is to predict. So, for example, if we're talking about suicide in the United States, we're talking about a phenomenon that claims the lives of 0.0001% of Americans each year. So that is the base rate of suicide. So if you were to, come into a clinic and say, I'm going to judge this individual to be at, let's say, low, moderate, or high risk of suicide, this is an incredibly, incredibly difficult task. And unfortunately, when it comes to children, if we have a situation where we're placing children into intervention groups or giving them treatment that they might not necessarily need, oftentimes kids who are judged to be at high risk, they already feel like loners, they already feel stigmatized, and to put them into a group where we're kind of singling them out again, this could actually have the exact opposite of the intended effect. We could be manufacturing more high-risk youth.
I remember years ago it seemed that every child was getting diagnosed with ADHD and being prescribed Ritalin, for goodness sake.
Yes, I mean, this is something where the phenomenon of overdiagnosis, some people call it bad diagnoses. Is it a real thing? Well, certainly when we take a look at diagnostic rates in juveniles, we do see that there's been certain kind of time-related trends in terms of something like childhood onset ADHD, childhood onset bipolar disorder, childhood onset psychosis, schizophrenia. We do see this, and there's experts on both sides of these debates. Those who say, listen, at the end of the day, this is a new phenomenon. It's come about because of issues such as technological advancement, making kids have shorter attention spans, having a harder time to really be focused on the real world, quote unquote. So people would make that argument as well. So detractors of the idea that there's an overdiagnosis of these kinds of phenomena, but whether there is or not, it's really up to conjecture.
Oh, well, when I was a kid, I don't know what the big difference is, for goodness sakes. Nobody I knew was taking Ritalin. I don't. Mind you, wait a minute, we didn't have all these high-tech games. We went outside and we played. We went fishing, and we actually communicated with our parents at something called breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Do you think that might have something to do with it?
I think it's possible. It's less my scientific perspective, more my personal perspective.
Yeah.
I suppose the idea that when it comes to the implementation of so much technology, it used to be, let's say, for example, I got on a plane. And I flew over, let's say, to Norway to be able to teach. It's an incredibly long flight. And the entire time you're going, what are you going to do? You're going to talk to the person next to you. You're going to read a book. You kind of zen out. You relax. Now, while I'm walking on the tarmac in the first place, I can be listening to my iPhone or my iPad. I get on there. I can be playing, my games. I can be, doodling around with apps. I can log into the internet now. Some people are saying that now we're going to start passing laws or passing regulations so that you can actually use your cell phones on flights. No matter where we go, we can't get away from this constant connectedness with everyone else in the world. And some of the research that we see coming out from researchers who are investigating things like social networks and such really do suggest that there are real, not just psychological, but in some cases biological consequences of really this new kind of media that we have and all these new technological advances, which make our lives easier, but it's certainly not a silver bullet.
Yeah, I'm just going to. I wonder what's going to happen to these young people that are constantly on their iPhones or their iPads, their smartphones, when they come to the real world and they have to do something called communicating verbally with somebody else.
Sure. I think that when it comes to communication, it's definitely something, obviously, where, I mean, it's such a critical skill, public speaking, interacting socially with others. This said, taking a look at different forms of communication, really, I have just been absolutely amazed by the skill which particularly adolescents who I've worked with over the past several years, and even some of my interns at the Global Institute are just incredible in terms of how effective they are at communication. But it's certainly not the communication that maybe we grew up with, Rob, in terms of, just calling somebody up or writing a God forbid, a handwritten letter.
Oh, my goodness.
To someone, it's totally different than what we experienced. But seems to be something where, this is the trajectory that things are going in. And so, it's a lost art, maybe.
My children and my grandchildren called me old-fashioned because I say, don't text me, call me. Not on the cell phone, on the house phone. You come into the house, there's a little table beside our front door. That's where you leave your cell phone. That's where you leave your iPad. If you come here, you come to see me, your grandmother, your aunts, your uncles, your family members. And you know what? If they don't like it, well, there's a front door and a back door, Ollie. I think that society, when it comes to all this new high tech, we're way too politically correct. I'm sorry, you go to a restaurant, you see Mom, Dad, and little Dick and little Jane. They're there, instead of talking, they've got their little iPads going or their little cell phones. What's happening to society? And does this have anything to do with the increase in mental illness that we're seeing?
Sure. I think that there's certainly a lot of conjecture on this. I'm always brought back to stories that my mother told me in terms of my mother was a hippie, no question. She had the long hair, flower child. She's the most amazing woman that I know.
My kind of lady.
And, incredible, Rob. One of these people, can only hope I can be half the person that she is. And but my mother would tell me loads of stories, of course, about how, at the end of the day, she would get into, all kinds of trouble when it came to, the hair is too long and society is crumbling, and this notion of, everyone loving each other and, God forbid something like, interracial marriage. Oh my goodness, everything is going to collapse in society. There was a great political cartoon that I enjoyed very much, which was basically this elderly woman sitting in a chair making a racially, what we would now consider a racially insensitive comment, and the child was a hippie, and I looked at them and said, "Oh my gosh, you're so old-fashioned, I can't believe it." And then there was another one of kind of present day, of another person who was elderly sitting down making a homophobic comment, and their child saying, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe it, how could you say something like this?" It's one of these things where all of us, regardless of our generation, we have our zeitgeist that we're following, and I am sure that for my kids and my grandkids, that I don't know what they're going to be into, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to hate it. But I don't know what it is yet. But something's going to be there.
But all the information that we're inundating with ourselves with, whether it's on the radio, the television, the iPhone, whatever. That can't be good for us. Are we programmed to process all this information that we're being bombarded with, Doctor?
Sure. I think the human brain is just an absolutely incredible thing. It's certainly the case where we're capable of processing a tremendous amount of information, but one thing that's kind of a lost art is really focusing on a single task. We typically these days, because there's always so much to do and juggle, we really, have come to embrace this idea of multitasking. However, we know from the scientific literature that multitasking may actually result in greater fatigue, and at the end of the day, doing multiple things more poorly than doing one thing well. So That said, of course, certain resources that are now available, something as simple as Google. There was another cartoon that I saw that I loved. It's these two little animals sitting down on a sofa, and the name of the cartoon was The World Before Google. And one of them just said, "Hey, I have a question I don't know the answer to," and the other one just said, "Oh, well, that's too bad." and this was the issue. Is these days, it's incredible on the device that I'm calling you right now, Rob. The idea that after our pleasant conversation is done, I can hit end and then literally search for any piece of information in the world on the same device. It's just incredible.
So what you're saying is I'm easy to forget. That's it. I'm off the phone. Goodbye.
These things. Well, I need
somebody
to
get
Rob.
me a
Come
drink.
on,
Get me some
so many
Valium.
hours of the day. Come on.
So, where do we go from here, doctor, when it comes to mental illness? Where do we go from here to helping people who are depressed, and how can we help them?
Sure. I think that one thing is really it's a fundamental. This is the fundamental paradigm shift, as it were. The fundamental shift in thinking is shifting thinking about mental illness as a character flaw or something that this only happens to a select group of people where there's something inherently wrong with them, where we want to kind of keep our hands off. That's them, and this is us. Versus really humanizing these issues and saying at the end of the day, absolutely, these are people who have medical issues, just like someone with, let's say, cancer, just like someone with cardiac problems, and we just need to make sure that they get the care they need to be able to live as fulfilling lives as the rest of us can only hope to live ourselves. I think that that's really step one and possibly the most important one.
How about the support and the funding from the government? Does that have to be increased substantially?
In my opinion, yes. This is definitely something where we've had here in the United States a real problem when it comes to obtaining enough funding for the behavioral sciences to be able to do the kind of public health research, to be able to support initiatives to provide greater access to mentally ill populations. And the funny thing is, there's certain interventions that have been found, they're very simple, have been found to be very effective. To give you an example, and when I say this, a lot of people have a very strong reaction, is to pay people to take their medication. Now, when I say this, people say, "Oh my goodness, you've got to be joking me." If you release someone from hospital, you pay them $5 to take their medication. They come back to the hospital just to take the meds.
Yeah.
Why in the world should I pay someone $5 to be able to do this? But at the end of the day, not only the adherence to the medication, but the tremendous cost savings of not having these individuals subsequently involved either in the revolving door of the mental health system in terms of hospitalization or in that tragic revolving door of the criminal justice system, we end up saving a tremendous amount of taxpayer dollars by simply spending relatively little up front for these kinds of initiatives.
Stand by, doctor. Stand by, sir. We've got to take our final break here. Dr. J.P. Singh is our guest. GIFRINC.com is the website. We'll be back on the other side as we wrap up this hour in the X Zone. Don't go away. With each new extreme weather event or terrorist act, it becomes increasingly obvious that we live in uncertain and challenging times. We all buy car insurance. Why not collapse and catastrophe insurance? Matthew Stein, an MIT-trained engineer and green builder, has written 2 outstanding books to help people prepare, plan for, and deal with everything from minor situations lasting a few days to full-on collapse. Matt's first book, When Technology Fails, is a manual for self-reliance, sustainable living, and surviving the long emergency. This massive book covers the gamut from first aid and emergency preparedness to alternative healing, renewable energy, primitive living skills, and 18th century technologies that could be critical to your comfort and survival in a long-lasting crisis. Matt's second book, When Disaster Strikes, is a comprehensive emergency preparedness handbook and survival guide. When Disaster Strikes is an essential item for every family's go bag. Both books are available at all usual sources. There's a wealth of totally free information posted at whentechfails.com, and author-signed copies may be purchased at mattstein.com. That's www.whentechfails.com and www.mattstein.com. Rob McConnell here, presenting an overview for Nicholas Paul Jennings, author of a fascinating book, Amen. It presents facts revealed by Egyptologists, facts that enable us to understand why Amen is the beginning of creation of God. It provides recommendations for religious leaders of the major religions to unify their beliefs and teach the Word of God. Love one another. Amen informs people how mankind conceived God. It was the Egyptians that developed the concepts of a soul, a hereafter, and Son of God. And finally, after the worship of many gods, they conceived the belief in one universal God, the maker of all there is. For more information, visit www.futureofgodamen.com. That's www.futureofgodamen.com. Exonation, Dr. J. Singh is my guest this hour, www.gifinc. Is that the right website? That doesn't look like...
GIFRINC.com.
Yeah, somebody typed it in wrong. All right, we'll take care of that. It's, once again, www.gifrinc.com. Thanks so much for being with us, Doctor. It's been a great pleasure talking to you. I guess we just have to get the word out there that this is an illness, just like any other illness that can be seen or that can be diagnosed, like we were saying, using the example of cancer or any other terminal disease or any other disease, period, because mental illness doesn't mean that the person cannot be cured, does it? And what is the cure rate when it comes to mental illness?
This is a great question, Rob. Really, when it comes to something like a cure rate, this is very difficult to be able to establish solely because at the end of the day we're dealing with different people and different diagnoses here. But we do have some common threads. So the idea here is it's all about, we have a German word, having just moved from Switzerland. The German word is Geschmackssache, which means goodness of fit. It means what is your personal taste, your personal preference. When it comes to seeking care or seeking treatment for mental illness, something that's very important to understand is that about 75% of, we call it the variance accounted for treatment improvement. That just means 75% of whether or not you're going to get better is the relationship that you have with your therapist. You know, is this someone who you trust? Do you have a strong so-called therapeutic alliance with your therapist? And it's not only the therapeutic alliance that you have, but it's also the kind of therapy. So, for example, there's three main kinds of therapy. One of them is called psychodynamic therapy, where the focus is mostly on feelings. Tell me about your feelings. How do you feel about this? Then there's behavioral therapy, where it's, you know what, let's not even think about how you feel about it. How are you acting? How are you behaving right now? And the final one is focusing on your thoughts. So this we refer to as cognitive therapy. So how are you thinking about a certain issue, and how can we change those thought patterns or distortions? When it comes to different kinds of mental illness, different forms of treatment and different approaches have been found to be more effective than others. But at the end of the day, this is research based on large groups of people, and if you or a loved one or a close friend, a spouse, if you have someone in your life, or even you yourself are struggling with these issues, then the most important thing to keep in mind is, number one, there's help out there, and number two, you can play a very active role in terms of determining what your care, what your treatment actually looks like.
Doctor, I want to thank you so much for being with us. It's been a great pleasure, sir. Please let our listeners know how they can find out more about you and as well as your organization.
Absolutely, Rob. So the name of our organization is the Global Institute of Forensic Research. Really what our vision, what our dream is to be able to get research into practice as quickly as possible. Once we have new findings that have been published on the topic of being able to predict some of these adverse outcomes, such as violence, we want to know as quickly as possible how we can put this into practice. And so this is what our goal is. We do this through training, through executive bulletins, and so please do always feel free to visit us at www.guiperinc.com.
Dr. Singh, thank you very much for joining us, sir, and thanks for the great work that you and your organization and other mental health caregivers are doing for this world. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Rob.
I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break with the news as we continue here in the X Zone with yours truly, Rob McConnell, from our broadcast studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away.